everyone, and welcome back to Module 6, Giving Corrective Feedback. In this video, I'll talk about the people who involve in error correction and how to manage correction appropriately. So, who should correct when students make errors? In practice, we can combine self-correction, student correction, and teacher correction. Each of these will be discussed in more detail in the next part. First, let's talk about self-correction. I guess you all know the famous proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. According to the proverb, there is wisdom in allowing people to fend for themselves once you explain how. This works in TOEFL too. Students remember the answer they work out for themselves better than the one you tell them explicitly. If you always correct for your students, they may lack the skill to correct themselves when you aren't there. Self-correction is important because it helps students understand why they were wrong. So, always give the students the chance to correct themselves. If they are going to become more accurate, they must learn to monitor themselves. They may have just made a slip and will welcome the opportunity to put it right. If we think that students can correct themselves, there are a number of things we can do to make this happen. For one thing, we can show that something is wrong by using facial expressions, for example, a raised eyebrow or some other quizzical expression, or by using gesture or body language to show surprise. This can be amusing, but it can also offend certain students. So, we must be very careful and try not to do this inappropriately. Another way we may do is echoing what the student has said using rising intonation. This indicates that we expect something more. The student may realize this and then be able to correct themselves. Next, we can draw the student's attention to the actual mistake by stressing the part of the sentence where the mistake was made. Or we can just repeat one word or phrase so that students know what part of the sentence to try to correct. We can also use explicit statements and questions to show incorrectness in the hope that the student can correct themselves. In a word, students can self-correct when we help them to know where the mistake is and what kind of mistake it is. In correcting written work, you can add self-correction by underlining errors and putting symbols in the appropriate place in the margin and/or giving appropriate page references. The students correct as many errors as they can and submit the work for remarking. Before submitting the work, they can show it to another student for comments. Next, let's talk about student-student correction. Student-student correction is also another good choice in correcting students' errors. It really brings about many benefits. When students correct each other, it not only involves all the students in the correction process, but also makes the learning more cooperative generally. More practically, student-student correction helps to reduce student dependence on the teacher. and increase the amount of the students listening to each other. In a class, there are always good students who are willing to support your teaching. So, just give them something to do, and they will surely enjoy it. You can make use of various techniques in employing peer correction. First, you can put the errors on the board. Monitor silent work, pair or group activities, and make a note of the errors. Then, during the feedback session, you can put the error up on the board. It's considerate to conceal the identity of the student who got it wrong. So, tweak the sentence a bit in order not to give it away. Then, consult the class and ask what's wrong with the sentence on the board. Some students have visual memories and may recall the error rather than the correct version. It's important to cross the wrong version out and put the correct version on the board. Another useful technique is going round the class, asking each student to say a word that some students are pronouncing correctly. If one student gets it wrong, ask another student who did well to say it again, and then ask the student who got it wrong to have another go. Watch the faces of other students when one student is speaking. If you see a frown or grimace on a classmate's face when a student makes an error, this is the ideal person to choose for peer correction. For written work, you can give the students the opportunity to read and comment on each other's work, either before you see it or after you have indicated the errors. And now, let's move on to teacher correction. If neither self-correction nor student-student correction is effective, you must assume that either the student hasn't understood what you are getting at or doesn't know what the correction version should be. In oral correction, if it's an important point and the others don't know it either, you may have to stop and teach it to the whole class. If not, and the meaning of the item is clear, you're simply saying it and getting the students to say it should be enough. No matter how you have done the correction, get the student who made the error to say the correction version. This is a vital part of any correction process. In correcting students' written work, many teachers use correction codes to indicate that students have made mistakes in their written work. These codes can be written into the body of the text itself or in the margin. This makes correction much neater and less threatening than random marks and comments. Different teachers may use different symbols. In order for students to benefit from the use of symbols, they need to be trained in the use. We can also correct by putting ticks against good points and underlining problems. We can write summarizing comments at the end of a student's work, saying what was appropriate and what needs correcting. Let's move on to the second part of this video, how to manage error correction effectively. To manage error correction effectively, it is important for teachers to be very flexible. In terms of self-correction, it is true that errors are usually made only by individual students, so correction often has to be on an individual basis too. The problem for teachers is how to spend enough time on any one error with any one student without slowing down the pace of the lesson and boring the other students. To reduce that likelihood, involve the whole class as much as possible in the correction process, and also spend less time correcting what is only a problem for one student, and more time on problems common to the whole group. Another important role for teachers is not to overcorrect. The more you try to correct something, the worse the student gets. So often, it's worth spending a short time correcting some items only, and not trying to get everything perfect in one go, and coming back to others on another day. Correction of major errors is perhaps best considered as something that should be done as quickly as possible, but it is likely to be a long-term process over a series of lessons. Lee 2005 suggests a number of ways of varying the amount of marking students' written work and the ways teachers do it. First, mark selectively. We do not need to mark everything all the time. If we do, it takes a great deal of time and can be extremely demotivating. It is often far more effective to tell students that for the next piece of work, we will be focusing specifically on spelling, or specifically on paragraph organization, or on verb tenses, for example. We will have less to correct. The student will have fewer red marks to contend with. Second, use different error codes for different levels. There is no reason why student and teacher should always use the same error codes. At different levels and for different tasks, we may want to make shorter lists of possible errors or tailor what we are looking at for the class. Third, don't mark all the papers. Teachers may decide only to mark some of the scripts they are given as a sample of what the class has done as a whole. They can then use what they find there for the post-task teaching with the whole class. And finally, involve students. Teacher can correct some of the scripts and students can look at some of the others. In reality, both self-correction and peer correction have extremely beneficial results. Of course, as teachers, we are not suggesting abandoning teacher feedback, but we need to be able to think creatively about how it can be best done in the interest of both students and teachers. In conclusion, in this video, I have talked to you about the people who may involve in the correction process and how much correction is appropriate to ensure the effectiveness and not to take too much time of the teachers. In the next video, I'll talk about when correction is appropriate and when it is not. I'll also cover the common correction strategies for both oral and written work. Thanks for watching.